Well, good evening, folks. This is Dave Schmidt. I'm your host here again tonight on the Sedona Connection. This is our September 11th program. It's nice to be with you again. Yes, I was gone for the last 2 weeks. Well, I was out of town, and not only was I out of town, I was actually out of the country. I'm not at liberty to say where I was and what I was going on, other than the fact that we have an alternate source of funds, and being able to acquire those funds would help us set up the credit union to get started in this whole process. So that's where I was. We ran into some complications, but everything is still looking good. Everything is a prospective go on that nature, but it's important to understand that those funds have absolutely nothing to do with our exchange. It's an entirely separate issue, but that's a good sum of money that I can bring in to get us started, to get the credit union set up, and so that's why I was gone, and it took some work to get it done. We, as I said, ran into complications, but there's still a very strong possibility that might happen. So that's the scenario of why I was gone. And then a couple of weeks ago, I announced that my brokers who work with the Texas processing office says there is a potential for this process to start in what they called late September to the end of the year. There's no new news on that issue. I have not heard anything new, but let me tell you what there's a possibility of what I think this might mean. We've been told it's a very high probability that the source of funds will not come out all at once, but we're going to be paid over an increment of time. We have no idea how much, what percentage, how often, or what the dollar value on that will be. But they've told us there's too much money involved in this exchange to release it all at once, because it could really create some havoc with the global economy. And by the comments that my folks said from September to the end of the year, it could be that's the process of how far it stretches out for the payments. Now, I don't know that. I cannot say. That's only speculation on my part, but that's the situation of what we're going on here. So now, for tonight's program, I'm just going to kind of talk for a little bit on some stuff. Today's September 11th, the anniversary of 9/11. It's hard to imagine that it's been 23 years now. And for those of us that are around when it happened, yes, it was an absolute shock. I remember getting up and watching the news that morning, and then watching, the second tower collapse, and then watching that third, building 7 collapse, and just hearing all that. And like so many of us, we were caught into a shock, and we wanted to trust and believe what was coming and being presented to us. And yes, it upset a lot of us. But after a while, we began to realize the reality of what took place. But here's what's interesting. Here we are now 23 years later, and mainstream media isn't talking about that what happened, how it happened, is logistically impossible. Jet fuel, which is basically kerosene, is they said that it was the jet fuel that basically went into the building, set them on fire. And tell me how kerosene makes 105 stories of concrete and steel turn into dust in just a few minutes. Folks, that is logistically impossible, and the laws of physics didn't take a vacation on that day. There's absolutely no doubt about that what happened on 9/11 was a setup. It was a planned catastrophe is what it was. It was planned, and the firefighters will tell you, the firefighters and the police, predominantly the firefighters in the building, will tell you they heard the explosions on all the way down. If you can still find a video of the towers collapsing and then play it in slow motion, you can see the boom, boom. About every 10 stories, there's an explosion that is going on, and it stays ahead of the whole collapse process. And now here's what's really interesting. On that day, 9/11, I remember watching it, and after the towers had collapsed and all the dirt and the dust and the smoke was in the background, they were interviewing Donald Trump. And there he was standing on the sidewalk, and one of the news programs was interviewing him, and all the dirt and the dust in the background, because you have to remember he lived in New York City at that time. And Trump said, this is an absolute catastrophe, but this really kind of dumbfounds me, because he said, concrete and steel doesn't collapse from jet fuel, which is basically kerosene. It's totally impossible. He says, I know towers. I own towers. I build towers. What has happened is not possible based on how they described it. And that was basically at that point, that was all that they had to say around that. But he understood the truth. He knew and understood that this was a planned catastrophe, and he knew it was basically the start of the deep state taking total control over our political process here in America. Now, having been a legislator, a state senator for 12 years, I really got to understand and know the political process. And here's what I learned. Politicians don't have anywhere near the power and the control that the public's impression think they have. In Congress, between the House and the Senate, there are 545 members. Is that right? Yes, 435 members in the House and 100 in the Senate. Of those, there's about 5 that are basically the powerful controllers. And the rest, in so many words, are kind of like seat fillers. Because see, those 5 basically have veto process over anything that comes forward, because anything that's going to come out of Congress has to come in the form of a bill that is voted on by both the House and the Senate and then signed by the President. It has to have all 3 of the different parties involved saying yes. But what happens in Congress, in the House, you have the Speaker of the House, you have the House Majority Leader, and then you have the Chairman of the Appropriations Committee. And why that one is because anything of any significance is going to have a price tag on it, and it's going to cost money, which means the money has to be in the appropriations bill. And then traditionally, the majority leader in the House chairs the Rules Committee, which votes on which bills come to the floor for a vote. So as the chairman of that committee, he can basically say, nope, that bill's not coming up. And then the Speaker of the House basically is the boss. And the Speaker can say, we're not allowing that bill to come up. You see, so you have to be in the good graces of the Speaker, the Majority Leader, and in the Appropriations Committee. And if you aren't in the majority party, you're just a seat filler. Now, yes, they will be nice and let you have some bills that might pass that have no significance of impact on the total control of what goes on in our country. So it's those 3 in the House, and then in the Senate, it's the Senate Majority Leader and the Chairman of the Finance Committee. Again, the one who controls the process of the majority party, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Finance Committee is the money person, the chairman of that. Those 5 people in Congress pretty much have veto power over anything that's going to come forward through the process. That means if you control those 5 people, you control what goes on in Congress in this country. And those 5 people are controlled by the money. It always comes down to the power of the money. I even experienced that at the state level about how money, the power of the money, would determine what would come to a vote, what would get released, and what would get funded. It's the power of the money that is there. Now, there was a recent quote, maybe about 3 years ago, that I saw that came from President Carter. And he said, we don't no longer have a democracy in America. We have an oligarchy. We have a government that is run and controlled by the corporations and the power of their money that controls what gets to come for a vote to be passed by the House, the Senate, and the President. It's always, at the end of the day, the money that controls the process. And that's what we call the deep state. And Trump knows that. And I remember when he was first elected, he kept saying he was going to come in to clean up the swamp. And it was a couple of years ago in an interview, he was being asked, and he says, you said you were going to come up and clean up the swamp, but at the end of the day, you didn't really get a lot of that done. And he said, I know, because here's what I realized. When I came into power as the president, I had absolutely no idea who I could trust. Because you see, as a president, I don't have time to read everything, to digest everything. I have to trust the staff people who recommend things to me to let me make a decision. I am dependent upon the professional staff, and they are the ones that professionally know the process and explain it to me. Well, if you've got these people that have been in these professional, nonpartisan staff positions for 20 and 30 years, they are the ones that really run and control what we call the secret state government, what we call the deep state government. And Trump said he didn't know who he could trust. I mean, just look at what he goes through. His schedule each day is just absolutely swamped and busy. He has over 100 people on staff just at the White House. He doesn't even know them. And in this interview, he said, it took me over 3 years to learn the process, to learn the system, and to know who I could trust. Now I know what to do, because now I know how to override basically the corrupt staff that wants to run it in their manner and their control and not give their best advice to me on what to do. And that is the scenario that we have, whether it's Trump that gets elected or even if it's Harris that gets elected. They both understand the process. But I think you're going to see a big, big difference between the two, that Trump is still committed to what is called draining the swamp and taking down the deep state. Now, why am I talking about this? Because it's the oligarchy that really runs and controls the government of the United States. We call them the Khazarian Mafia, the deep state. Ben Fulford labels them as the Khazarian Mafia. When I call them as the cabal, that's basically who they are, the Khazarian Mafia. They have the money to run and control everything. And the Khazarian Mafia, their two primary members are the Rothschild family and the Rockefeller family. The Rockefellers run and control mostly what goes on in the United States, and the Rothschilds control what goes on in Europe. They are both parts of the bloodline of the Khazarian Mafia that run and control what goes on in this world. Trump knows that, and the people at the exchange, the currency exchange that we're involved in, they know that. Now, when it comes to the currency exchange, this process is designed to create a shift to the power and control of the money system. You see, the money system is run and controlled by the Federal Reserve, basically the bank of the banks here in the United States. Yes, it's in the United States, and they have direct control of all of the money supply here in the United States, but they indirectly control it all around the world. And here's what's interesting. The Federal Reserve is not a government agency. It's a private corporation, a private business that is run and controlled by the dominant stockholders of that private corporation. And the Federal Reserve has the ability to impact the ebb and flow of the economy, the ups and downs, the recessions, the expansions, etc., that goes on in our economy. And the Federal Reserve has been run and controlled by the Khazarian Mafia, those that we call the cabal. This money that is being released through the currency exchange is designed to be asset-backed money. It's going to be placed into the system, and in so many words, it's going to replace the power and control of the Khazarian Mafia. Now, Ben Fulford will tell you they are on their way out of their power and control already. And why has this taken so long? Because we're waiting for the right time and the right scenario where the release of the funds creates the healthy shift to the economy, and it basically totally neuters the cabal, the Khazarian Mafia. They're not going to take him out. They're not going to send him to Gitmo. They're not going to, execute him and stuff like that. They're just going to replace their power and control. And when they lose their power and control, that's when they begin to realize they begin to lose everything. What you're going to find, in my opinion, when the Khazarian Mafia recognizes they don't have the power and control, they will withdraw and go away for their survival. Because they will know there will be a ton of people that are really pissed off. Because you see, when this much money, the trillions of dollars that is going to be released through the currency exchange, what it does, it gives scores of thousands of us involved in this to say, cabal, we don't need your money anymore. We are no longer slaves to your system. See, the Khazarian Mafia has set up a system where the vast majority of all of us as regular everyday people, we're slaves to their system. We're slaves to their systems. We may feel like slaves, but in reality, we work our jobs in their corporations, and the working of the jobs and raising our families takes us 60 to 70 hours a week, and we have very little time for ourselves to do the work to create the changes that we want to change. It's a survival mode of going to work, coming home, taking care of your family, doing a little bit of stuff, going to sleep, get up the next day and do the same thing, and then when the weekend rolls around, you're in a recovery mode. That's basically the system that the vast majority of humanity is a slave to, and it serves the slave masters, the Khazarian Mafia. And the money that's released in the currency exchange, what it's going to do is going to stop that slavery system. Now, we've been told that the Khazarian Mafia cannot stop our process, and they know that. But they are going to try to create chaos in the process. And my hunch, my thoughts is they're going to try to create chaos by having us so caught up in having the money that we don't use it wisely. There's something out there that's known as the lottery complex. When an everyday person who just works a regular job all of a sudden wins the lottery and becomes a multimillionaire, what happens is they say over 55% of the time, the people that receive the millions, within 1 to 2 years, all of the money is gone and they were right back to where they were before they got the lottery money. It's called the lottery complex. What it is, it's a mindset that people don't know how to handle this vast amount of wealth that comes in unexpected and overnight. And they go out and they spend it all or they waste it foolishly. What's important for us to know, when this process starts for us and the funds start to being released, what you can do for yourself, the very first thing is do this now. Sit down and plan what are you going to do with your money, and write it down on a piece of paper, put it on a file on your computer, and hold yourself to that. Sit down and think, how much are you going to use to pay off all of your bills? How much are you going to use to give away? How much are you going to use to invest? What type of investments are you going to make? How much are you going to use to spend for the new things that you would like to buy? Maybe you want to buy a new house, a new car, etc. Plan, plan, plan. Write it down. Put it on a file on your computer and look at it often, because that will help you have the discipline so you won't fall into the lottery complex. Plan on the fact that you're going to give a good portion of it away, 20 to 30%, to help other people, because this has come to you so unexpected with such a small investment in the process. Now, I can go on in the stories about the currency exchange, where this money comes from, and why this is happening. At the end of the day, this is a part of what we call the white hats It's their way of shifting and controlling the power structure that we've been under by the Khazarian mafia for hundreds of years. Is designed to neuter their power and put the people back in control if we ever really had it. But that's, in essence, is what it is designed. Plan on getting a good financial planner. Now, don't email me and ask me who. That's your responsibility. That's your business. You have time to start doing your research. And you might have to be a little careful in a financial planner because they're going to ask, what kind of money do you have? How much are you getting? Where are you getting all this money? And right now, unless they're in this exchange, that's still a part of your non-disclosure agreement. The biggest thing you can do now is write it down what you're going to do with all your money when it comes in. Now that's the process of what I wanted to share with you tonight. I've been going for about 20 minutes. I think that's what I wanted to share on the program. So let's go ahead and go to any of your callers that would like to call in, and you've got a question or a comment that you would like to make. The call-in number is 515-605-9356. Again, 515-605-9356. That brings you up on Blog Talk Radio. You press 1 on your touch-tone phone. It brings up a little hand and tells you that, yes, you would like to do something. You'd like to make some comments. So we have one person at this time, and it's the area code 203. So we're going to go to you. We're coming up. It's coming up. Area code 203. You're on the air. What can I help you with?
Sure. Hi, Dave.
Yes.
Yes, this is Peter. I'm Peter from Connecticut.
Yes.
And I'm curious what your opinion is. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Oh, I didn't know if I had on speaker or not. But anyway, I'm curious in your opinion if Kamala Harris wins the election, Democrats have a victorious election. Is there less of a chance we're going to see this, currency program pay out before the end of the year, or could that, delay it beyond the end of the year?
I don't know. I don't have any direct answers on that. First of all, we have been told, regardless of who wins the election, it is not going to stop the exchange. Now, obviously, the process would go much smoother if it's Trump versus Harris. And I'll make a comment on that. I'm still kind of dumbfounded how before she became the candidate, poll after poll after poll said she was the most unpopular vice president we had in decades. She was very unpopular. And then all of a sudden she becomes their nominee and she's the most popular Democrat around and they're absolutely loving her. So I'm questioning some of the polls. And the other issue is
political.
The other issue is she is so extreme to the left in her voting when she was in the Senate. She was absolutely by far the most far left liberal senator in the U.S. Senate when she was a senator. And I think the people they're starting to pick up on that. The people are. The people are starting to pick up on that, and they're starting to realize the extreme that they would be in with her as the president. But here's the issue. Regardless of who wins, it's important to know that we get to rise above it and not let that impact our everyday lives. When I wake up tomorrow morning, Joe Biden being the president has absolutely zero impact on how I live my daily life. He doesn't affect me and impact me at all unless I let him do it in my mind. Unless I'm fighting with him, arguing with him, debating with him in my mind, that's the only impact he has on me. So even if it's Harris,
that makes sense. Yeah.
It's the same thing. Our job is to rise above the drama of the politics and who gets elected, stay focused on our mission of what we're going to do with these funds. And the politics is secondary. Okay?
Sounds great. Thank you. I appreciate your
comments. All right.
comments.
Anything else?
Not at the moment. You covered it well. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a great evening.
All right, thank you. So, if there's anybody else that would like to call in, I'm looking. We don't have anybody else. I'll give this about maybe 30 seconds because I know there's a slight delay. Oh, somebody just came up. There's a new caller from area code 440. Area code 440. Okay, you're on the air. What can I help you with?
Yeah, hi Dave. This is Gene from Ohio. How you doing?
All is well in my world today.
Hey, question for you. I'm constantly watching the stock market, and I know we had that big downturn, I don't know, a week or two ago, and today was kind of crazy. It was down almost 700 points, and then it came back to a positive. Do you have any insight on what's happening with that? And do you see that as kind of the trigger to for this to happen in some form or another?
No, I don't see the stock market having a trigger on this at all, not one bit. First of all, it's important to know, as we have moved into advanced technology, and also you can do automated computer trading, there are very, very wealthy people that control the stock market through artificial intelligence and automated trading. Here's an example. When you have a share of stock, let's say at $100 a share, it doesn't make how many shares are in, the trade. It only means, is it a buy or a sell? So you could have someone turn around and sell 10 shares of stock and it goes down a tick. And then somebody else could turn around and buy 1,000 shares of stock and it goes up a tick. So they can build these automated computer programs to control the market. And you've got very, very wealthy, powerful people that can absolutely control the stock market with about maybe $750 to $1 billion. And you've got Khazarian mafia people out there that are doing it. Our stock market has never really been the same since we've moved into this computerized automated trading that you can build algorithms around to control it. And you got professionals that are doing it. So it's not a true people's market anymore. And so I'm always a little bit, see, I remember going back to 2008 when we had the massive crash in the market. The markets crashed. The Dow dropped over 53% in 6 to 7 months. Millions and millions of people lost a lot of money and they lost their homes. But there were members of the Khazarian mafia that became billionaires out of a crashing market because it was all a planned corruption by those that control the Federal Reserve and the money supply system. You see? So they control, they make it look like on a day-to-day basis it's just regular stuff and everything's going on. And yes, it slowly goes up. And that's what makes the people feel good. Because you see, I forgot they said it's about 60 to 70% of the people in America have money in the stock market. And how do they have it? It's in their 401k retirement plans. They aren't directly invested, but their retirement plans are invested in the market. So they want to keep those people content. They want to keep those people satisfied. And so they allowed the market to go up and up, kind of gradually over a period of time and keep them content and satisfied. Well, they are there, running, controlling the market. They know when it's going to collapse and go down, and that's when they buy their puts in the options and make a ton of money. So, because they know how to control it, which way it goes. Now, that's my opinion.
So, all right. So, in your opinion, the market has nothing to do as a trigger or anything like that for this to happen?
Absolutely nothing.
It's a separate.
It's not the market.
And what about?
It's the global politics. It's the global politics that will determine the timing of the release of the funds, not the market.
The other question I had was, we've heard from many good sources about banks, collapsing and so forth. Is there anything? I mean, do you feel there's anything to that? And is that part of something that would trigger something to happen?
The reality of the banks collapsing, it is going on. There are a ton of small to medium-sized banks that are collapsing. But the four big ones, they're keeping them propped up and the mainstream media doesn't report it and talk about it, because if all of a sudden the news starts coming out that there's a collapse on the banks, there will be a run on the banks and people will start pulling their money out of the banks left and right. It's already happening. Now, I forgot the number, but it's something like there's been about $1.3 trillion have been pulled out of the bank accounts in the last year and a half. I don't know exact number on that, but it's somewhere in that area. People are pulling their money out of the banks. And what my recommendation has always been, if you have discretionary funds, don't leave them in a bank account. Now, you need your bank account to pay your everyday bills and make your audit, your stuff you got to go buy. You got to have your debit cards to buy your grocery, buy your gas, and pay your bills and stuff like that. But if you've got discretionary money that you're not living on month to month, put it somewhere else. Now, what I've done, I've bought a lot of silver. I have a lot of silver. Silver and gold are usually always fairly safe. They will stabilize, if not go up. You can also buy bonds in very, very strong, stable companies. Companies like Walmart is a very strong, stable company, because regardless of what the economy goes on, it's always going to be around because people need to buy their everyday stuff to live their lives. So Walmart, Costco, stuff like that. Those are stable companies you can buy. If they're available, you can buy bonds on them. So, okay.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that's great, Dan. I appreciate your insight on that. It's just that, I've always thought that, something with the market or these banks failing would be, something to look for, to give us an indication of something happening. But, from your perspective, that has nothing to do with it. It's really the global politics that we'll see to make this happen.
I had thought we were going to see a collapse. I really, truly had, because all the signs in the scenario was there. And that's what, again, when I woke up to, is we live in a different world today than we did back in 2008 and 2004, because we now live in a world where the markets are controlled by automated algorithm computer trading. And they keep the markets up artificially. And the news that comes out of it, it's always wanting to be fairly positive, because that what keeps the people from panicking, because the last thing they want is people panicking and pulling their money out. So you will never hear the mainstream media reporting about that. Okay?
Gotcha. All right. I appreciate it, Dave. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for all you do.
Yep, you bet. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. We got one more caller from area code 918. We'll bring them on the air. Area code 918. You're coming up. You're on the air. What can I help you with?
Hi, Dave. This is Ralph from Tulsa.
Yes.
I've been hearing little stories about the RV doesn't happen until we start pulling our troops out of Iraq. Is that true or not?
There is no RV. There is no such thing as an RV and a Nasera Gasera. Those are all false reports. Who's got the trillions of dollars to pay for an RV or a Nasera Gasera? Who's got the money? The people that report and talk about that, they can never answer that question. Those are all, if you go back, a lot of the sources of that information comes out on the website Dinar Recaps. When I started this process about 10 years ago, I was on Dinar Recaps. I was being quoted on Dinar Recaps often. Any of my articles were being posted on there. And I kept, though, asking the question politely, who's got the trillions of dollars to pay for what you talk about? And they would never address that question, and they would never answer it. And then after about 3 to 4 months, they banned me from that site. You will not see my name allowed anywhere on that site on Dinar Recaps. I know the man who set up the site. I'm not at liberty to mention his name. I had a conversation with him on Skype, probably about 8 years ago. And I later found out he was convicted for fraudulent money lending and money laundering. And the guy who started Dinar Recaps is now in jail. So you see,
Wow.
I don't believe hardly anything that comes out of that site. Now, there's good people there, and they're wanting to do their best, and they're trying to be honest, but they're deliberately being fed misinformation. And there's a good 8 to 10,000 people a day that read that site and listen to that stuff. And my understanding, it's designed to be a misinformation site, thinking that they're going to be able to just take their currencies into the bank and walk out multimillionaires with an RV. And it's all designed so they never go after and find the real source. And that's its purpose.
Oh. Well, I guess what we're calling the RV is the same thing like you're talking about. You get a deal set up for your broker for $1.50 per dong.
That's not an
They have a similar
RV.
thing.
That is a private contract currency exchange, not an
Exactly.
RV.
That's what they're calling an RV. It's revaluation of the money.
No, it's not a
That's what they're
revaluation. Please understand this. Don't call it that. You're misleading people when you do. The dong is
Okay.
a public currency traded on the foreign exchange market, and it is not going to be revalued to $1.50. This is a private contract exchange. And only those who are involved in the exchange in a private contract will be involved in this. There will never be a public RV where you can walk into a bank or a processing center and exchange your currencies. Let me come back and say again, what bank has the trillions of dollars to pay for that? Where are they getting their money?
I had no idea.
That's
I
right.
had no idea.
And they never addressed that question. See, I know
What I have heard, for whatever it's worth, the U.S. Treasury is supposed to have that money. It's from the gold they got out of the Vatican.
no.
So,
False information again. Those are deliberate lies to mislead you.
wow.
Deliberate lies to mislead you. The private currency exchange is run by what we call the Texas Processing Office. They got their
Right.
money originally from the dragon families that are based out of Hong Kong. And they took that money and they are allowed to participate in what is called the off-market trading platforms. Now, there's only about 4 or 5 organizations in the world that are allowed to participate in that off-market trading platform. The public will never know about it. Wall Street does not know about it. And that's where we get our money from. I've had it verified. My brokers have seen the bank accounts that they have, and we know the source of the funds, and we know how they got it, and we know how it grows.
Wow.
And there's nobody else on
So
this. There's nobody else on this
Dragon
planet.
Family's doing this then.
There's nobody else on this planet doing that. Nobody. Now,
Well, there's sure a lot of lies out there floating around, aren't they?
there's a ton of them lies out there floating around. But the people don't know it, and it's all designed to suck them in so they never find the truth.
Yeah.
Now,
Wow.
I'm not the only one doing this. There are other brokers, but there's a reason why I am allowed to talk about this publicly in my radio program and in my workshops. I'm not allowed to go into detail about that at this time, but I have the permission of the dragon families to do this. And as far as I know, I'm the only one in the world that talks about this private currency exchange openly and publicly in workshops and a radio program. I don't know anybody else doing what I do.
Well, I don't think they want very much talked about because the cabal's going to try to put a stop to it if they can, right?
Yes, they are, but they won't be able to. They won't be able to stop it. So
No, but they're
there's
going
a-
to try because that takes away their power.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, quietly and privately, that the public does not know about. But as I said, I am the one that they allow to talk about it publicly, because they don't want to be criticized and say the public never knew about this, and they can come back and say, oh yes they did. All you had to do is find the right source of the information, and it's right here. I've been
Yep.
doing this for 10 years.
Wow.
I've been doing
Yep.
this for 10 years, And I've taken my time to make sure that what I am reporting is honest, it's correct, and it's true, and I know where the money came from and I know where it is. Now,
Yep.
but the Texas Processing Office doesn't tell me everything because a lot of it has to remain quiet and confidential. Because if you notice, I never say anything else other than the Texas Processing Office. You will never hear me call them anything else.
Well, Dave, you got connections nobody else does. You've actually met with some of the Dragon family, talked to them, so you got connections nobody else has.
I've been to Hong Kong 4 times and met with them.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes. I know their
So if anybody's going to
background.
know anything about it, it'd be you.
I know their background. I know their history. I can follow their history back almost 3,000 years.
Wow.
They go.
That's
The
amazing.
Dragon families go all the way back to the era of King Solomon, who was the son of King David.
Wow.
They can trace their family genealogy all the way back to King Solomon. The Dragon family can.
Seemed like you said at one time, not all of them are whiteheads, though. Not all of them are good. Is that right?
There's a few of them that through the process and time kind of, got caught up into the greed process and they went their own direction. There's a few that did that. But for the vast majority of them, they're faithful and they're true to the process that's been a part of their family for thousands of years.
Wow.
There was at one point in time that they had more gold than anybody in the world.
Wow.
And I've seen it.
So our truth believe Iraq has nothing to do with any of this, right?
No. Iraq has absolutely nothing to do with any of this. Where's Iraq?
Okay.
Where's Iraq getting the trillions of dollars to pay for the revalue of their currency? They don't have it. So what we're wanting to, if you believe that, what you're wanting to believe is that Iraq, just out of the goodness of their heart, is going to give away more than $1 trillion to all these everyday people that they don't even know who they are? Do you think they're really going to do that? That's what you're believing. That is what you're believing if you're believing Iraq is going to revalue its currency.
Oh. I'll tell you what other people were saying, Dave. I don't know myself.
People are reading and believing what they're seeing on Dinar recaps, and they're doing that from a place of hope. And they're wanting to believe it, and they're wanting to think it's going to happen, but they don't stop to logically think through what does it take to make it happen, and who has that kind of money to pay for it.
Wow.
They don't stop to think about that. Okay?
Okay, well, thank you.
Alrighty, thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
Okay, have a good evening. Yep.
You.
Okay, is there anybody else still that would like to call in or make some comments or questions? We've got an open spot here still, and if I don't see anybody coming up in about the next 30 seconds, we'll go ahead and call it a program tonight. And again, it's always nice to be back on the air, and hopefully, we might be seeing something happen here by the end of this month, but we'll see. Folks, if I get any new information that is a possibility, I will send it out as a newsletter as soon as I know that it's confirmed, okay? So don't start emailing me and asking me, is there any new news or anything like that. Folks, remember, I have close to 9,000 people on my newsletter list, so I don't have time to respond to everybody, okay? But and I give the information as I can. Our job is to stay positive, stay focused, keep praying, and be thankful that it's on its way. All right? Okay, I think then that's it, and I think we're willing to call it an evening here tonight, folks. I want to thank you all for joining me, and maybe I'll see you next week, okay? All right, thanks a lot. Okay, bye-bye.